Hi everyone. Hope all of you are doing great and this part of the year is treating you nicely. Just the other day I had a conversation with one of our young friends, one community member, and his question was, how do you overcome your laziness? And that question got me thinking. It got me thinking because just a couple of hours before this person pinged me, I myself was struggling with not wanting to do things that I had planned for that day. Essentially struggling with my own laziness to sort of start working on the things that I had on my agenda for that day. And the first thought in my head was, this young person asks me, how do you overcome your laziness? But have I really overcome my laziness? And it set me thinking, and it led to a whole chain of thoughts. And a couple of things I observed. First thing that came to my mind was that the things that I do fall in 2 or 3 categories. One category is of the things that I do regularly and the things that I am able to do regularly with fairly less difficulty. Like motivating myself to do those things is not really that difficult. I am able to sort of manage that fairly easily. There is a second category of activities which I want to do, but I find it very difficult to sort of motivate myself to do those things, to put my energy into those things. So in other words, for the second category of things, the laziness really sort of engulfs me. So when it comes to my battle with laziness, have I been able to overcome my laziness? The answer is not an unqualified yes. For certain activities, yes, I am able to do them. I am able to motivate myself fairly easily to keep doing them day after day. For certain other activities, I really have to push myself hard. And in a lot of cases, on a lot of days, I am not able to sort of follow through on them. So there my struggle with laziness continues. So the first idea that hit my head was that maybe thinking in terms of this black and white idea of somebody having been able to overcome his laziness is probably not very accurate. What we need to do is think in terms of activities. There are certain activities for which you have overcome your laziness, and there are certain other activities for which you have not been able to overcome your laziness. And then if we go back to our jungle survival model, our favorite model, the organic evolution, the lessons from organic evolution model, if we look at an animal in a jungle, in a natural environment, which we humans have been for the longest time in our history, and our ancestors have been. So a lot of our lessons come from those jungle survival days. At least a lot of biological and behavioral traits come from that. An animal in a natural environment has very limited energy. So once you eat, you have essentially taken in a certain fixed amount of energy. Now that food gets digested, that gets broken down into energy, and you have a limited amount of energy till the time you eat your next round of food. And in this limited amount of energy, you have to do certain things. You have to find that next round of food. You have to save yourself from predators. You have to sort of survive the nature and elements, and also, if possible, look for a mate. Now, having a limited energy and having so many activities to choose from essentially means that a surviving animal will be selective about where he spends his energy. Which means that we would always be struggling. The surviving animal would always be struggling. Should I spend my energy on this or should I not spend my energy on this? And how does your brain communicate that selection to you? Through laziness. So, for certain activities, being lazy, essentially your brain is telling you that, well, I don't really want to sort of spend energy into this activity. Now, this may happen because of a lot of reasons, because of our training, because of our habits, because of the way our machine learning has so far worked. But the central idea is that we have limited energy. We cannot spend that limited energy in doing everything. So our brain has to select things that it wants to do, and it has to reject certain things that it does not want to do, which essentially means that laziness is a part of our makeup, our biological makeup. Laziness directly descends from our tendency to conserve energy. Another articulation could be that human beings and animals are essentially energy conservation machines, which means the energy has to be spent smartly. For certain activities, the brain would not readily allow the energy to be spent. And that model tells us that possibly it will never be possible for most of us, for probably all of us, to overcome laziness in an absolute way. That, I am not lazy at all. I am able to sort of put my energy into everything, which is not possible because you have limited energy and your brain has to think of ways to sort of spend it wisely. Essentially, laziness is a biological trait. And instead of thinking in terms of an absolute victory over laziness, maybe we need to think about managing laziness. And interestingly, that idea itself gives us a hint as to how can we start managing laziness. Now, laziness is essentially our brain's method of rationing the energy, deciding which activities to spend energy on and which activities to not spend energy on. And how does our brain do it? Our brain does it through training that it has received. So, certain activities on which we are trained, we find it fairly easy to spend energy on them. We find it fairly easy to motivate ourselves. We find it fairly easy to overcome laziness in the context of those particular activities. So the basic model roughly is that your brain has two sets of activities. A, the activities on which it has been trained and it finds fairly easy to spend energy. And B, the activities in which it has not been trained in that way and it sort of resists spending energy on those activities, and that's where you feel laziness. This essentially means that if there is a certain activity that I want to sort of overcome my laziness about, what I need to do is I need to move it from category 2, where my brain does not want to spend energy, to category 1, where my brain is trained to spend energy into it. And how do I train my brain? We train our brains through repeat action, repetitions, and spending time. And how do you go about that? You essentially go about that in baby steps. So let's take a specific example. Let's say I want to sort of manage my laziness with respect to working out. In other words, I decide that I want to exercise every day and I don't want to feel lazy about it. What I essentially need to do is take this activity of exercising every day from category 2, where my brain does not want to spend energy, to category 1, where my brain is fairly trained into spending energy on it. How do I do that? Let's say I have never really worked out. How do I start training my brain into it? I start with baby steps. So maybe just half an hour I'd work out. And the other thing is make it as easy as possible to do those activities. So let's say I decide that I'll run for half an hour. I run for half an hour, come back, do other stuff. Next day, I feel very lazy because I have not been trained in it. I never really ran before and I've just ran yesterday and I'm feeling very, very lazy. Somehow get yourself to do that activity again that day. We've deliberately taken a small target. We just want to run for half an hour, maybe even 15 minutes if you find half an hour very difficult. And then I do that activity again that day. Next day again the same thing happens. I again do that activity for just that limited amount of time. If 15 minutes is what you have decided, you do it for 15 minutes. Once you are able to do that activity for 15 minutes, you have trained your brain into doing that activity for 15 minutes. You will find that overcoming laziness for that 15 minute of run becomes easy if you have already done it for 10-15 days. And then you can start thinking in terms of pushing it up. Maybe from 15 minutes, I push it to say half an hour. And then again for the next 10-15 days or a month, I run for half an hour. And let's say my ultimate target is that I want to run every day for an hour. Then again, 15 days, 1 month, when I find it much easier to sort of run every day for half an hour, I sort of push it to 45 minutes. And then again, 1 month, maybe 15 days, 20 days, whenever you feel comfortable with making that transition, you push it to say 1 hour. And this is how you move activities from your second set, which was the brain does not want to spend energy on those activities, to the first set where the brain is fairly trained into spending energy on that. And category 1 activities are the activities about which you can say that, well, I have sort of overcome my laziness when it comes to those activities. Similar process would be followed about any other activity that you want to overcome laziness about. Whether it is studying or working on your business or writing or learning singing or anything that you sort of want to sort of overcome your laziness about, that is essentially how you do it. You try to move it from category 2 to category 1. Category 1 is the set of activities where my brain is fairly trained in spending energy because I have been doing it for a long time. Because that's how we train our brain, by keeping on doing the same thing again and again and again for a certain number of days, and our brain starts getting trained into it. So that's my story about laziness. Nothing like an absolute victory over laziness, but yes, you can manage laziness, and managing laziness essentially means going activity by activity, picking and choosing activities that I want to be able to do every day, and then training my brain into spending time on those activities. In other words, bringing it to category A, where my brain is fairly trained to spend energy on them. So that's all in this episode. If you liked it, share it with friends, like and subscribe it. We'll be back soon with more cool stuff. Have a great day.